Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another Gordon Report. This is the November issue, November 2020, and I'm Ira Wolfe from Success Performance Solutions, and I'm with Ed Gordon, who is the writer, originator, founder of the Gordon Report. It's been coming out for a number of years. I've been a big fan of it, and just a few months ago, we decided to do these live and get a real up-to-date version of what's going on, and it's tough to keep up, isn't it, Ed?
Right, yes.
Yeah, for sure. So I know we've got a few things on today's topic. The topics, I'm not sure, are changing a whole lot, but the news is, and I know a lot of people are pretty anxious to hear what's ahead. You and I, right before the show, we're talking about even your white paper that's coming out, initially planned for February, and looking at the date, because things just change so fast or slow. Yeah. They're either, some things aren't changing fast enough, some things are changing too fast. So we're going to talk today certainly about the jobs reports that have been coming out, a little bit more promising, but see what's ahead. We're going to talk certainly about COVID in the news and how that's going to affect things, China, and we'll see where else that goes. So I'm going to turn it over to you right now, because I know you have a lot of new thoughts on what's coming.
Well, let's tell you some positive news to start. First of all, we're now up to 10.8 million jobs that are vacant across the United States. That's almost the same number of job openings that we had before the corona pandemic started, which is good news. And also, too, the jobs picture brightened somewhat until very recently, where there were fewer people filing for unemployment benefits. Now, that has turned around somewhat in the last day or so. And of course, the report from the last quarter, the GOP growth is good. We've made up, a 33% expansion in the third quarter is good, though the economy still is about 3.5% smaller than it was when we started. The virus news, of course, has dealt further blows to U.S. jobs as people not just are laid off, but they are also furloughed. However, the stock market did reasonably well for the end of October into November, and it has recovered somewhat yesterday. The Dow did go up all the way up to 29,479, mainly on the hope of the vaccine news. And now we have a number of vaccines, Ira, as you know, that may be deployed. In fact, today they were talking about, again, the fact that we may start seeing people vaccinated before the end of this year. Now, the other news that's very interesting, of course, is the number of new entrepreneurs that are entering the workplace. As people are furloughed or laid off, we see a lot of people setting up small businesses across the United States. And this is good news, particularly for those people that have entrepreneurial skills and know how to market themselves. Now, not everybody does, but a number of people are. So you have people in travel, hairstyling, personal trainers, designers, chefs who are setting up small businesses. And at the same time, companies are offering more perks to their employees so that they're expanding childcare, they're offering discount parking. Goldman Sachs is giving free lunch to people in their cafeterias. The other thing that people are very happy about is that they've spent 60 million fewer hours commuting to and from work over the past few months.
Hey, Ed, what was that number? What did you say?
60 million fewer hours commuting to and from work each day. Yeah. Now that was at the beginning of November, so it's even gone up since then. So these are all positive signs. But my big news that I wanted to offer to all of you is this. Now, I do a monthly radio show here in Chicago on COVID-19 and what's going on. And my Big news for all these listeners, and I want to emphasize to you that I'm apolitical, but as a historical economist, I do an awful lot of research in terms of not just economic issues, but also social issues that are going on, even not necessarily the jobs. The pandemic right now is basically out of control. Now, if people wore masks, we would have a lowering rate of infection and a lowering death rate. So I want to start off, before I give you any numbers, with a simple message. Mask it or casket. Everyone needs to wear a mask. Everyone needs to social distance. Everyone needs to wash their hands. I'm tired of hearing people on television who have been denying. And then when they end up in the ICU, they're telling the nurse, well, you know, maybe these numbers are real. Maybe there really is a plague going across the United States. Maybe this isn't an international political conspiracy spawned by some crazy group. It isn't. This is real. And if we don't get real about it, when we talk about opening businesses, job loss, the impact of closing down the economy, what impact will have 400,000 dead on the economy by Christmas? Is that going to help the economy? I think these are individual decisions that individual people need to make. The states can pass mandates. Very few have actual penalties. It's up to the self-discipline of Americans to decide what they want to do with the economy, with their business, with their life, and with their family. Right now, we have 11.7 million people who have been infected across the U.S. We have 251,000 people who have died. That's more people than died in Vietnam, Korea, the First World War. Very soon, if we're not careful, we're going to have more deaths than occurred in the Second World War. I emphasize this to you because many people don't think this is real, because the virus, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it. If we had 250,000 people dying on the highways of America because we had no restrictions on driving, speed limits, there'd be an outcry, there'd be anger that people, that we weren't being protected by our government. Well, folks, 251,000 deaths is real. And maybe, or maybe not, you've had someone you know die from this. I have. And you're going to hear and see a lot more. So right now, those are the real numbers. Right now in our workforce, the so-called unemployment rate is 6.9%. That number is way too low. We have millions of people who've given up looking, who have a decent education, are trainable, and they are not working. Right now, we have about an additional 25 million people who are not listed as unemployed, who should be, and many of them can't get a job, even though you have that 10.8 million vacant jobs, because most of those employers won't train them into the job, even if they have most of the skills. So what we're really looking at is something like 35 million people who are unemployed across America, not 11 million, which is the official rate, which is about a 22% unemployment rate. And this was true even before COVID. So what about older people? What about all the people you know who are older, who are semi-retired or who have been laid off? There's a huge number of people out there. The average age of CEOs is climbing. And the other thing that interests me is that so many CEOs that I talk to don't have business degrees. They have liberal arts degrees, and they're great communicators. and they know a lot about the world. And people continue to focus on the idea that you have to have a pure business background, you have to have a narrow finance background, or you're not employable, or you're not really a serious business person. Well, I disagree, because I see the majority of people that I know who are in sales or marketing or management, they have business backgrounds, they've taken courses, but they don't necessarily even have an MBA because they're not in finance. And the issue now is a building for the long term, not just for the short term. Yeah, we need to wear a mask right now immediately. That's pretty short term, and not die. That's pretty short term. But for right now, in the spring of 2021, as is coming up, there's a new labor economy that we've forged. This coronavirus has accelerated the introduction of automation, robotics, AI. Fewer jobs, though, are going to exist for undereducated people across the country. And two-thirds of the workforce that we have right now are undereducated. Two-thirds. That seems rather ridiculous, doesn't it? Well, the fourth industrial revolution has changed the job market. And this post-COVID economy, and that's where we're heading now into next year. I'm hoping by June, things will begin to really pick up as the new vaccines are readily available and are being deployed to more and more people. More people will begin returning to the office. More companies will start looking around to try to hire. But unfortunately, one of the things that seems to be shaping up is we may start seeing you bidding up wages in order to find those educated workers. And that in turn, wage inflation could get out of control by 2022. And those low interest rates that companies have thought they could use to borrow and finance for merger, acquisition, etc., I think are going to start to dry up. And as a result, what you're going to see is the beginning of serious potential inflation in the United States as companies start searching for those educated people they need and they can't find. Now, some are starting up corporate universities again, which is really a great thing. But what we need right now is more people concentrating in their recruiting. When they look at that recruiting, what are they going to do to add value to the potential people that they're going to hire so that they are highly productive, so that their productivity and performance reaches the level that we need? With the levels of debt that have been taken on by government in order to sustain the economy so it doesn't go into a depression, and the debt levels that companies have assumed as well, the only way out of all this is for the economy to grow in real terms. Now, I think the economy can grow. We have the technology. The question is, do we have the human brains behind the technology to do the innovative things that we want? Now, this is a long-term investment, which goes against many of the algorithms that you see that businesses apply now to their finance in order to cut costs, eliminate people, and increase profit short term. There has to be a new balance between short term and long term in this economy. I think it's coming. I think it's going to be, in some cases, brutally enforced as a lot of small businesses go bust and a lot of larger companies become less competitive because they don't have the brains behind the technology to compete with other foreign countries. Right now, for every 20 cents that American business puts into training its workers, our biggest rivals spend $1. That cannot continue. This is a knowledge economy, and we need more knowledge workers.
So Ed, let me stop you there for a minute, because there's a million things to kind of unpack. One is, it's pretty interesting when we talk about education. And again, whether it's through corporate university, through colleges, what the pursuit is. As you know, I've just started to teach a program in graduate program in leadership on organizational change. We have a number of students. The last 2 weeks, we've actually had a focus because they have them identify something current that they found was interesting, disruptive, how it's going to, and it ended up talking about education. So the other night we had the dean of the graduate program present it. Exactly the conversation we were just having about the future of liberal arts colleges. They were talking about, how does a Master of Leadership compete with a master, an MBA? People's and MBAs are being commoditized. I mean, there's a challenge with getting people into that. But there's also a book. I don't know if you've seen it yet. I've been following it a lot with everything I've been talking about, adaptability quotient. It's called The Adaptation Advantage. Up here you can see my clips, the markings. Right. There's a whole and I think this is where you were headed with this, and I would suggest people go up and continue to listen to us as well. They're basically talking about, there's so much focus on STEM. Basically the science, technology, engineering, and math. Right. So much focus on that, except that in the future, a lot of those skills, a lot of those professions, a lot of those the knowledge that people would learn are going to be programmable. I mean, a lot of what they learned is programmable, where what's not being taught is going back to the liberal arts. You mentioned people skills. What makes a senior, a CEO who may or may not even have a business degree, may have a philosophy degree, may have a degree in English, successful. And he had a liberal arts degree with maybe a focus or an interest or continuous learning in business. Mm-hmm. But it was that more well-rounded perspective. And if you look at I know you're familiar with these lists, World Economic Forum, Institute of the Future, McKinsey, what are the skills that are going to be listed? And it's rarely that the top 10 skills include math and science. It's usually critical thinking. Now, we learn that through math and science, but we taught people to be good at math, not necessarily good at thinking. So critical thinking is always up there, but collaboration, adaptability, agility, ethics, governance, project management, collaboration. These are all the skills that are driving the future of business. Yep.
And the future of workforces.
Right. And yet the schools that are being hurt the most are the ones that teach liberal arts.
Yes. And that's very short-sighted, because a lot, IBM's old motto was think. All right. Mm-hmm. And thinking skills are important. Now, not everyone has an IQ of a genius, but most people have an average IQ, and can they be educated so that they can problem solve better, so that they can communicate and collaborate better? Yes. Now, not everyone's the outgoing mavens that you and I are. We got to get on. We got to constantly be talking to other people. But sorry. All right, we got that taken care of. But on the other end, the idea is, well, how do you improve that? Well, I see this race now of many businesses partnering with colleges, universities, community colleges, so that they can get up to speed in certain technical areas for manufacturing and other applications, which is fine. However, we have to realize something. We have to realize that the kids coming out of high school, if they don't have a level of education that supports thinking skills, which basically says, okay, if you have comprehension of words and numbers at about a 12th grade level, you're probably going to be educatable and trainable for any occupation you want, whether you want to be a brain surgeon or you want to be an auto technician. All right. But you need that level of comprehension. Only a third of our high school graduates have that. Now, if a third of them do, and yet 68% go into a community college, or four-year university or apprenticeship or whatever, well, what happens? I'll tell you, they fail out. Why? Because they can't read the textbook. They can't do the numbers. They can't problem solve. They can't do word problems. They can't communicate. They're not good at team building. They really aren't good at learning how to learn independently. And I want your audience to think about that one. How many of you started out in the jobs that you have today? Have you changed career areas and professions? I have, many times over. I have a company, that Imperial Consulting Corporation, that's very diversified. We do lots of different things. And how have we been able to do that? Well, I have people associated with me, like Ira, the two of us. We've learned how to learn. We can do many different things. We have degrees, but on the other end, we've applied our ability to learn in many different ways based on our interest and aptitude. Well, that's what we need to do with more people, and we're not doing it.
Well, and you're right. We need to look at our basis of education. How do we get every student that graduates, not necessarily can pass the achievement tests that have been used as our milestone, but have that ability to apply that what they learned, and again, think how to. But it's interesting, again, doing the work with the adaptability quotient, like I have been, that the new, I won't say a new concept, but a lot of discussion around unlearning. So the individuals who have been educated, who have 10 or 20 or 30 years of experience, or we won't go into how much experience we have combined, here. But how do we unlearn? And I think that was part of it. It wasn't that we just kept stacking another degree on top of another degree on another degree. Yes. It's like we used to do it that way, but that way isn't working as well as it used to. So what do we need to do differently? And whether you want to call it different, we do it differently, or we call it unlearning. So we're learning and unlearning at the same time. And that's to me, that's even a bigger problem, because we have all these people in the workforce that were all of a sudden thrown into a digital world, have to work remote, and everybody's hoping we go back to the way it used to be, when the reality is they have a job. They are in a job. They will be somewhat secure if they learn to do it differently.
And the only way to do that, and this is where this disruption, this major worldwide disruption, we're living through an unprecedented historical event, this plague, this modern plague, that is rewriting what is going to happen into the future. A lot of the systems that we've had supporting this economy are clearly out of date. Mm-hmm. We're in a fourth industrial revolution, and we have a workforce that's trained, based, and educated for a 20th century economy. That's something that Ira and I have been working on for many years, to try to systemically help regions and companies and communities to update the way they deliver this talented workforce. Can we increase the level of talent in our local communities, and for our businesses to survive and our economy to grow? And the answer is yes, we can in many ways. My book, Future Jobs, which you see right behind me, chronicled how companies worked with their local communities, nonprofits, local government, in order to do just that. And there's a need now, because we've broken the mold. People are right now very worried about the future. They see this rising tide of illness and death around them. They fear the disruption of jobs and their businesses. And yet the U.S., because of its wealth and its technological savvy, has the opportunity now to do something really hard, and that's to update its educational systems so that we use technology, we use better teaching in classrooms, but we also get more adults to support lifelong learning for themselves and for their kids. So what I want you to think about is your own family, your own kids. How much do you support learning and encourage learning in your own house? What do you do to, right now, your kids are at home, most of them, and they're struggling to learn. You see how hard that is. What are you doing to support that? What will you do to support better learning for your son or daughter once schools start up again? My niece, who's a school librarian, was saying how the schools around Denver started up. They may be shut down now for all I know. But the kids were so happy to be back in school. They were so bored being at home. All right, fine. Many kids dread learning. How much emphasis, how important is learning in your home? Not just learning to make money, but just learning about the world in general. This is something that a lot of American families do already, and more need to adopt it. Whether they're Black, Hispanic, African American, Asian, I don't care who you are, what your political philosophy is. If you want your kids to prosper, if you want your local businesses to prosper, we have to emphasize what Ira and I are talking about, learning how to learn for the future and making learning something not to be afraid of, but learning something as something that's exciting and something that we can adapt to in our own lives.
And I know we can go on forever with this, Ed, but I know you have a pretty hard stop coming up here too. And we've had our listeners on for almost a half hour, which sort of reaches everybody's breaking point these days with Zoom fatigue. We didn't cover a whole lot. I don't know if you can summarize where we are with China in 30 seconds or 60 seconds.
Sure. China, I meant to get into China, but the issue of China's growth is important for many businesses. And right now, don't necessarily believe those figures that you get in the China rebound. Don't necessarily believe those figures that they're COVID free. Also, too, China is loaded with debt since they have 500,000 non-performing companies owned by the Communist Party. There's a day of economic reckoning coming for China. And at the same time, as the economy has suffered, the belligerence of the Chinese government toward the rest of the world and their region to distract the people away from these economic problems is not helping the situation at all. So I don't think China is now, as they did earlier in 2008, going to step in and save the world. If anything, I think China faces major economic issues over the next 5 years. And I would go slow in investing and expanding in China.
And certainly a lot more to unpack there because, also from the AI side, not with all not with everything that you mentioned, but certainly in artificial intelligence, they are becoming more advanced than we are. They've put a lot of resources, they were more focused in there. So that's another component. So they may have the advance on that part, but then struggling. But I think just an overall message from everything I heard you share today is that we're at a tipping point, and we keep saying that. You and I have been saying that for you longer than me, but I've been saying it for 20, 25 years. We are at a tipping point, which also means that it's not all bad. I mean, it's not like we're at the top and it's going down. We're at a tipping point where we have a tremendous amount of opportunity. This is a time to really change how we educate, what we focus on in education, because people are going to be looking at resources and where should, we only can do so much. So what should we focus on? Maybe we need to stop doing the silly things we used to do. Maybe maybe remote work or virtual learning. There's a place for that. How can we utilize that better? And, also where should we focus our interest, our national interest, our community interest? So we are at this tipping point, and that makes me hopeful. I mean, when I get up in the morning, I don't come down. I'm excited to get back to work because I keep thinking of all the things that can be done, not, oh, we're in this mess and so paralyzed. So, I think that's a message I keep hearing from a lot of people. People were forward thinking. So I appreciate, I've always appreciated the Gordon Report, getting it as we did quarterly. Now we're getting it monthly. You and I get to have these conversations live, that we get to share with everybody. And I'll be looking forward to December, and it's a month away, but that's like an eternity these days. You can see in the bottom of the screen for everybody, how you can get in touch with Ed at imperialcorp.com. I highly suggest you get on our list for the Gordon Report, and you'll get notices when we do these, or Ed does some other updates too. Yes. I also updated my ebook, which turned out to be my book, and my TED Talk and a number of other things, When the Shift Hits Your Plan. So it's a little snapshot of some of the things, but I've updated it with some current stats and ideas. So you can get that for free as well. You can just go to whentheshifthitsyourplan.com and download the ebook. There's a little video for about 1.5 minutes up there, an animated video, which hopefully you'll enjoy. Ed, any closing words?
Well, stay safe, wear your mask, and prepare for the future. Yeah. So we'll see you again next month. Until then,
we wish. Don't forget, Wednesdays 1 p.m. Geek Skeezers and Googlization. You can go up to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ira Wolfe. You can go up to the website, Success Performance Solutions, or Geek Skeezers Googlization. Lots of ways you can get a hold of that. And then we're on all the podcasts. This is replayed on YouTube and Facebook, so it is available up there as well. And hopefully, so I will see you one more time before Thanksgiving. I will not see you, Ed. So I do wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I know you're going to have a very small family event, but be safe. And hopefully next time we talk, we'll have some even better news about the world to come.
Yes. Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.